The demon had indeed been influencing Tordrad's mind, using his gifts of Cornite legacy to make the most hot-headed male in the vicinity feel the rage and desire to kill. It knew that if it made Tordrad let go of his control, that he would be an easy subject to manipulate, perhaps turning him against his allies. Tordrad again shook off the feeling that tried to seep down through his skull with an uncomfortable feeling like an unexpected raindrop down the back. He looked around at the state of his party, desperately seeking motivation enough to summon the strength required to face this monster. Tordrad took a deep breath and knew that now was not the time. He pushed his anger back down and after a couple of seconds smiled with renewed confidence as he pushed forwards into the fray. He grabbed the spear that was stuck blade first in between two flagstones and kept moving. As soon as he reached the furniture, he planted one foot on a chair and forced his entire body up onto the long table that ran a long way across the hall. Bowls and cups were smashed and sent flying. Cutlery bounced and bent beneath his huge feet as the Kislevite moved as fast as possible along the length of the table. As he reached the end of the table, he made a charging leap, using the momentum of his run to propel himself towards the demon. With both hands grasping the spear, he raised it above his head and said a prayer as he closed the gap. Thor, I beseech you, if I am to fall to this creature, may I fall like a tower upon it and crush its bones, so that the others may finish what I have started. He slammed the head of the spear into the beast's back, piercing the flesh and searing it as the power flowing through the weapon unleashed itself upon the demon, causing it to writhe in pain. Tordrad was thrown off, the spear no longer in his hands but still lodged in the creature's back. He landed next to Maestro, who had a silly grin on his face as he spoke.
Glad you could make it, my man.
Rysandria shook off both her fear and Maestro's nonchalant approach to the situation. If this is the trail of faith you have set me upon, Shalia, then I fear the enormity of the task you prepare me for. Dieter shot back. Instead of thinking what she needs you to do, girl, try focusing on the here and now and let Maestro deal with the future sight. She sighed and pointed her gun at the demon prince once more and then pulled the trigger, only for it to not fire. I'm becoming too caught up in this situation. I'm panicking to my detriment, thought Rysandria, as she realized she hadn't reloaded. She looked around hurriedly for something to use, as she knew her quarterstaff would probably just break against the beast's hide. Her eyes fell upon Tobias's crossbow, still loaded with a bolt. It was, however, quite a distance from her, and who knows what would happen to the group if she took her eyes off them for 1 second. But she had to risk it. Tordrad was unarmed, but that didn't matter to him, as he had wrestled bears back in his native land, and surprisingly, he was able to keep out of the creature's way. Its slow movements made it easy to predict and adjust to attacks, each swipe of which could kill a normal man in one shot. He was unable to hurt it by just trying to punch it, but most of his weapons were scattered on the ground, so he made do with what he had. He would never give up. Dieter used this opportunity to get behind the demon and begin slicing away at it, then moving back before it could connect a retaliatory swipe. Rysandria had managed to grab the crossbow, and while still moving she prayed under her breath, "Oh dearest Shalia, I must ask for the help of another while we are guests in his house." She ran around to the other side of the great flame, took aim, and squeezed the trigger mechanism, propelling the bolt through the fire and out through the other side, the point of the bolt being the only part that had caught ablaze, but the way it burnt was intense, as if glowing with white heat. Meanwhile, the demon swung an arm around, finally able to grab Dieter, and threw him aside into Tordrad, knocking both men over. It then turned its attention back to Maestro, who tripped over his robes as he tried to retreat backwards, and realized he had nowhere to run, and no one to hide behind. Blast it, he thought. If only I'd been a master engineer, I could have shot this thing with augmented bullets of killification. He knew that wasn't a word, but he liked it anyway. The beast was now towering over him, ready to deliver a final blow to the foolish mortal that dared to stand against it. Rysandria's aim was spot on, As the bolt impacted squarely into the creature's chest, cracks spread outwards from the entry point. The cracks began to glow with a holy light as the demon let out a last roar of defiance. Its corporeal form shattered, and thus banishing its spirit back to the ether. The spear that was lodged in its back fell to the ground, the sharp, pointed end landing in between Maestro's legs. Maestro let out a sigh of relief as he stood up and dusted himself down, before smacking himself in the head with his palm.
Oh, now I remember what I forgot to do. I didn't ask for its true name.
The sound of laughter mixed with coughing interrupted his thoughts on the matter.
Fool! You think it to be that easy to defeat the will of the Blood God?
Liebnitz chuckled as blood slowly trickled out of his mouth.
All you succeeded in doing was sending back but a fragment of my master's true form to the heart of chaos.
A wide grin evident on his face. The group had gathered around the dying man. Even Tobias was awake now, nursing his head.
Well, obviously we can't kill a demon like that.
Maestro was agitated at the fact his knowledge of magic was being questioned.
But get to the blasted point already. I've had enough of your religious jabbering to last a lifetime. No offence.
He spoke, the last part in Rysandria's direction. She ignored it. Liebnitz just laughed again, causing him to cough more severely.
Then you truly don't know of the other two relics holding the remaining fragments of his power?
Before they could answer, however, he stated,
When the three are brought together, Zarthrodox the Red Flayer shall return and bathe this world in the blood of the weak. Blood for the Blood God. Blood...
He never finished, as his body finally gave in to the blood loss and collapsed onto the floor. Before anyone had a chance to speak, the fire of Ulrich erupted and filled the entire room with silvery white flames, consuming the corpses of the cultists, but leaving the adventurers unharmed. A voice resounded in their heads. It spoke,
You who have protected my temple, spread word to the others to put aside their strife as the true enemy of man is confronted. Let this mark be a sign to all.
Moments later, a white scar had appeared on each of their right hands, bearing the symbol of the white wolf, holding a hammer in its forepaws. They stared in surprise at the small but impressively detailed design present on each of them. Dieter sighed as he looked at the mark and shook his head.
Great, another bloody tattoo,
He thought.